Good afternoon.
How are you? Good to see you.
Thanks for coming today to this lecture. I'm Owen Youngman. I hold the Knight Chair in Digital Media Strategy here at Medill, where I came several years ago after spending 37 years at the Chicago Tribune, figuring out what jobs these next two guys could do after me. Our guests today are Jerry Kern, who's the editor and senior vice president of the Tribune, and Phil Niccolls, who's the senior director of consumer marketing. Jerry came to the Tribune in 1991 to be the suburban editor, one of the jobs that I had earlier held. He went on to do many other things and do them better than me, and he was the features editor when Blair Kamen won a Pulitzer Prize, which is no small feat for a critic at any major metro paper. He's been the editor of the Tribune since 2008, and he's been overseeing, with the Tribune, like many media companies, in difficult economic straits, made no less so by the fact that Tribune's been operating in bankruptcy since December of 2009, has been carving out a path to both financial and readership success by trying to navigate the choppy waters of this changing market that we write and think and talk about a lot here at Medill, both in IMC and journalism. And we'll hear a lot today from Jerry and from Phil about just how that works. Phil Niccolls came to the Tribune in 1997 from the Audit Bureau of Circulations and worked in a variety of business side jobs, notably in the finance department, which is where I worked with him most closely when I was there. He went out to work at Newsday for a few years when Tribune Company still owned that newspaper, but came back after it was sold to Cablevision, and now as senior director of marketing, he oversees things that I used to do, like philanthropy and community relations and loyalty and things like that. I would hazard to say that both these guys have it way tougher than I did, which were largely fat and happy times, not just in the newspaper business, but in the media business. Times when, because we were big and wealthy and powerful, we didn't necessarily have to pay attention to what the customers were saying to be successful. That is one thing that has changed dramatically throughout the 15, 16 years of the internet era, but particularly in the last 5 or 6 years of severe economic turmoil in media generally. But that doesn't mean the situation's hopeless. In fact, Phil and Jerry share my essential optimism that the value that news media can and do still deliver will resonate with audiences in a way that they'll want to pay us for what we do, and with advertisers who will want to reach those same engaged people. What we're going to hear today from the perspective of a marketer and an editor is how that comes to pass on the playing field of Chicago 365 days a year, except this year when it's 366. So join me in welcoming Jerry Kern and Phil Niccolls.
Thanks, Owen. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Owen. Very happy to be here at Northwestern again on this lovely day. I was going to say it's like a lovely early May day, and it's still March. We thank Northwestern's Medill School for inviting Phil and me to talk to you today. And we want to talk to you about the Chicago Tribune and how we are operating in a very dynamic, very rapidly changing media environment. Our talk is going to be about as advertised, the Bigger, Better Chicago Tribune in both printed edition and other forms. I think Phil and I want to give you an overview of the origins of this project and particularly our efforts to understand audiences, understand our readers, their needs, and what they value from us. I think it's most fitting to be here to explore these issues at the school that's named for one of the great founding fathers of the Chicago Tribune, Joseph Medill, and I'm especially pleased to have the opportunity to be here today to update you on some progress that we've made since I gave a Crain lecture here in October of 2009. 2.5 years ago, I was invited to speak here, and I showed you this page from December 9th, 2008, and I want to revisit it because I think it also is the beginning point for a lot of the things that you're going to see here today. It was a historic day for Tribune and for Illinois. We were in the midst, as Owen said, of an economic crisis that gripped the Chicago Tribune, the media industry in general, and much of the country as a whole. I think this page carried an article about Tribune Company, our parent corporations, filing for bankruptcy because of a leveraged buyout that collapsed. This was a tale of financial distress, not just for the Tribune Company, but also for media all across this country. But alongside of it was this exclusive story that we carried about the governor being investigated for allegedly, at that time, attempting to sell the Senate seat that had just been vacated by President-elect Barack Obama. Even by Illinois standards, this corruption was outrageous. So I think this demonstrated to us why the work of journalists is so important, and how the Chicago Tribune and other news organizations, I think, are essential to the strength of our democracy. And it also very clearly and painfully showed that we must find solutions to the economic problems that beset us if we want that kind of journalism to survive. So we made a very series of important decisions in a very dark time for us. We redoubled our commitment to public service journalism to be the leading source of news, information, and engagement for and about Chicago and the Chicago region with investigative, local investigative reporting at its core. Now, many of you who are readers, I think, have seen this in this emphasis on investigative reporting. We articulated these ideas in a set of principles that are seen everywhere around the Chicago Tribune newsroom, and we regularly talk to our readers about those things. You'll see that at the very top of this list is standing up for the community. And that means through watchdog reporting, through accountability, journalism, and through opinion leadership, whether it is on our opinion pages or whether we take an editorial to page one. We believe that that is the starting point for everything that we do, that is the engine that drives us forward. And we strive to do it every day. Now, December 9th was also important to me for another reason. We began to see our readers as a community, and that the Chicago Tribune is really part of that community as well. Readers are quick to tell you when they're not happy about things, and over the years, we've done a fair number of things that made them unhappy. It's because they feel a sense of ownership and participation in the newspaper, whether it's on paper or on a digital screen. They really regard it as theirs, their newspaper. So in this event, readers really rallied around us. They told us that they were grateful for the work that we were doing, watching out for their interests, holding leaders accountable, and they were worried that Chapter 11 was putting us at peril, that there was a chance that we would go away. Nobody wants to be in Chapter 11, of course, but that was really never in doubt. As I said, this was a leveraged buyout that was ill-advised and did not work, and the paper has always been profitable and remains so today. But it was clear that our readers valued this core mission of public service journalism above all, particularly that watchdog reporting role. So that was the good news for the journalistic mission I discussed earlier. But what about solving the economic problem, right, which is much more difficult? Well, I think the Chicago Tribune must be much more than a newspaper or a website or an app that you use on your smartphone. If you subscribe to the idea that readers constitute a community, or better still, a collection of communities, it's clear to see that our value is really based on the relationship that we have with people. The Chicago Tribune, we think, is a brand that delivers valuable information, experiences, and benefits to those communities through a variety of media channels. But we are not just the channel. So we've created the new expanded Chicago Tribune for several large audience segments who are devoted to that print medium. And by the way, these are existing readers. We didn't set about trying to get, for this part of the effort, trying to get demographics that we don't already have. We know, of course, that the printed edition won't be for everyone. It may not be for many people in this room. We are creating other media for those other audiences. And in fact, we've already established a wide, varied portfolio of print, digital, and targeted media. And this portfolio is growing now and will continue to grow into the future. Now, there's another, I think, hard truth about media economics. And that's, in the future, consumers likely will have to assume a greater share of the cost of supporting news. In fact, that's already happening. Now, when we expanded the Chicago Tribune last summer, we also asked readers to pay more for it. They see the value in the expanding of the paper and are paying, and we're very gratified by that. I think it opens up all kinds of possibilities for us in the future. But because people have an enormous choice, they will only pay if they see real, unique value in what we offer them. Therefore, we must start with the consumer and build for them. Now, our story today, and the reason both Phil and I are here on this stage, is to talk to you about how journalism and audience development and marketing communication can work together. And in fact, I think that's the larger idea at work at Medill right now, and I think that we've put a lot of those ideas into practice. So I'm going to kick it over to Phil to talk about audience segmentation.
Sure, and before I start, I just want to say good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here with Jerry and with Marty and Owen, who asked us to be here, and as well the Medill students and the IMC students. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about sort of the science that was behind the marketing and the choice of the segments that we chose to go after in these changes. Now again, I could talk probably forever and ever about how we went about this, but I'm going to try to just give you the process so that, and then maybe during the question and answer, we'll be able to get into some more detail that you're interested in. So the first thing we wanted to do as we went through this process was to understand a little bit more about our audience, and so that we can better understand the way we were responding to their needs. So, you know, again, as Owen mentioned, he was at Tribune during the FAT days, and we really this segmentation is not a new concept to most marketing people, but it was to newspapers. So the first thing that we did was we resegmented our market. So we've been doing this since about the 90s, but this is only our fifth iteration. So let's take a look at what our process was in the segmentation methodology. So as we wanted to include as much data as we had about our market and our customers. So the first thing we did was we started with Prism NE. So any of you who are familiar with marketing probably have heard of Prism NE. It's a Claritas product that segments the entire country by household. So that's a good place to start. It was our good base. Then what we did is we started to layer on information that we had about our customers and what we knew about our market so that we could modify the Prism methodology for our needs. So the first information we added was information we had about our customers from our customer system. So we knew, were you a customer, were you not? Were you a Sunday only? Were you a 7-day? How much were you paying? How do you pay us? How did you come on as a customer? So we knew all of that information and we layered that in. Then we utilized other sources like Scarborough to start to layer in information about media consumption, because I want to know not only do you consume newspapers, but how else do you consume news and information? So we layered on top some of that information. And then finally we added some very specific demographics like age, education, income, presence of children in the household, and so on and so forth. So now we have this sort of big pile of data. We started to examine that pile of data and realized that there are several one of the variables measured some similar things, like income. So PRISM measures income, we had layered in income, and there were some other variables that measured income. So we got rid of all the redundant variables because we didn't want those to be included twice in our segmentation. Then we got the statisticians involved. And this is where we perform the cluster analysis. And what that does is it statistically identifies characteristics among this whole population with all of this data layered in, and it begins to sort of group those and starts that process and starts to develop clusters. So in the end, once we had these clusters, we layered those back on top of PRISM as a way to be able to map all of our segments to every household in our market. So that was the process we went through. We ended up with 9 segments that are in our market. In the interest of time, I just want to talk about 3 of those segments that are fairly close and near and dear to our heart, and just give you an idea about what we know, some of the things that we know about those people. So our first segment, these are in no particular order. Let's call it segment 1, and we kind of called it living life to the fullest. So as we describe this segment, the first thing you'll see is a key insight. And what that key insight is it's something that you might hear someone from this segment talk about. So it really helps people begin to engage with what these people are like. So the key insight for this segment, for living life to the fullest, I'll read it quickly. I still approach life with the same vigor I did when climbing the corporate ladder. Now, instead of the corner office, I make the most of my time so that I can enjoy life. So this segment is primarily older. They're generally empty nesters. They have fairly high income. When you look at their media consumption, they're heavy newspaper users. Chicago Tribune being one of the top newspapers that they use. They're about average internet users. They don't watch a lot of television, but they do listen to the radio. So that's segment 1. And activities as well. They tend to be active. They like things like hiking, bike riding, outdoor activities, and swimming. They like to go to the symphony, the theater, the opera, and they travel both domestically and internationally. So that's living life to the fullest. Our second segment, which pay attention to this one because I'm going to come back to this one, is what we call on the go with the family. So the key insight here is I'm always looking for ways to make the most of my time, whether it's a new gadget to organize my workday or someplace new to go with my family. So family being a key word there. So this is a middle-aged group. They have comfortable income. They're generally a presence of children in the home. But their children are slightly older, so no infants. We're talking maybe late elementary to high school is the age of their children. Heavy print readers and moderate users of other media like internet, television, and radio. Again, very active, keeping in mind they have children, so they like to work out, swim, do things like gardening and photography. They read publications like golf and skiing. They enjoy activities with their children like sports events, theater, museums, and theme parks. The last segment I wanted to talk about today is segment 3, and let's call this Digerati. And there may be some people who are part of that segment in this room today. This is a young segment, a very young segment, with a heavy urban presence. A lot of them have good jobs or are just out of school. They're more likely single and they have no children. This is not a print reader segment. They are very low on print read, but they are heavy users of internet for gathering their information. And Chicago Tribune is one of the places that they turn. So again, this segment, as we start to look at how we're developing products, is a segment that we would talk about our digital products rather than our print products. Again, since it's a very young segment, they're very active. So as you look at the kinds of things they like to do, they're outdoors, they're running, they're camping, they're working out, they love going to concerts, eating out, nightclubs, neighborhood festivals. They love fast food, which I find is an interesting one, and they use public transportation. So that's our segment. Now as we set out on this journey to enhance our product, we focused really on segment 2, that on the go with family, as a target segment for our changes. Now, this doesn't mean that the other segments won't like our changes. It just means that this is a segment that's really going to inform what we do as we change our product. Now, this segment, again, is to remind you, is the core Chicago Tribune customers. In fact, it represents the largest percentage of subscriber base, plus they do have a strong online usage. They're about 35 to 54. They own their homes. They live primarily in the suburbs. Their children are ages 8 to 17. They love self-enrichment activities like gardening, yoga, gourmet cooking, and volunteerism. They travel a lot. They have a high mobile presence, so they love using their mobile devices for things like texting, sports scores, weather, traffic, and they're more likely than the population in general to own an e-reader. So the family activities then include things like going to the Shedd Aquarium and the Brookfield Zoo. So as we took a deep dive into understanding this segment, in order to inform our product development, I want to hand it back to Jerry, and then he can start to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that we made.
Okay, thanks. So in looking at all that information, the segmentation information and other information, we set about developing a plan for essentially building up the printed edition of the paper for those audiences. And so we introduced this bigger, better printed Chicago Tribune on June 15th, 2011 with this spadia that explained the expansion to our readers. And what we did was we added 44 full news pages per week in areas of high interest to those core segments that Phil just talked about. That's 2,000 additional pages of news a year rather. And it's more space than the Chicago Tribune published 5 years ago, and about the same amount of space as we published in 2001, even though our advertising volumes, our ROP advertising volumes had declined considerably since then. So we think that this expansion is unique among American newspapers, and as we say, we believe that we zigged when everybody else zagged on that. And we did it because we wanted to strengthen the Chicago Tribune, the printed edition, for the core constituency, our most avid readers who loved the experience of that printed newspaper. Now let me underscore in this that our news philosophy, our approach to the news did not change. We are committed to seeing the world through the eyes of people that live in the Chicago region and capturing what it means to live here with that strong accountability investigative core. But we added a lot of depth and dimension to that in areas that I think readers felt like they wanted more. So I wanted to step you through a couple of examples of that. Over the last 3 years, you no doubt have come to recognize this Tribune Watchdog label that we put on many of our investigative stories. We were already doing a lot of it, but we added more to it, and we gave it better display and therefore, much greater emphasis than before. You've probably seen the ongoing reports that we've published on our Fugitives from Justice series. As an example, we disclosed how easy it was for murderers and criminals of all kinds of stripes to escape justice by slipping across the nation's borders, in large measure because our authorities won't go after them. Another story, that we did was we made the pension reform in Illinois a hallmark of our reporting. Perhaps you've seen some of this. In the Pension Game series, we showed how one labor union official was rehired by the city of Chicago for one day, enabling him to cash in on a city pension in addition to his union pension. And since then, we've gone around uncovering how other union officials have inflated their pensions and double-dipped, triple-dipped in some cases, and I think this reporting helped drive change in the legislature, and this is just one aspect of our reporting about this. I could go on and on about other things that we've done. We want this idea of the watchdog reporting to be sort of the core value, the message that we communicate to people, and we get them to keep coming back to us for. But we also expanded in other areas. We broadened our Nation and World report with more news and analysis from our Tribune correspondents, our company correspondents around the globe, the Tribune Washington Bureau, and other sources. We added 10 pages a week there. We added 12 pages more in business, which is a section that our readers told us that we did a good job insofar as it went, but they wanted more depth in, and so we did that by adding pages and new features. We started a dining section, not because there was any advertising base for it, there wasn't, but it was clearly important to those core demographics who are interested in food and wine and entertainment and dining, and we launched that section for that reason. We extended the Sunday Arts and Entertainment franchise, which was a success, to daily, adding another 10 pages a week in this for entertainment, both from the Chicago area, but also around the entertainment world. And then we added pages to our perspective section, our opinion pages, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, where we offer editorials and commentary about the problems facing the city and the state and the country. Now, we think this is extremely important, this idea of opinion leadership, taking a stand, being able to articulate what is right, what is wrong, being able to help lead people to better government. I think that, along with the investigative reporting, is really the soul, I think, of the Chicago Tribune. At the same time, we enhanced ChicagoTribune.com and relaunched it. Breaking news is the primary focus of the website now, and we had 3 separate breaking news sites, sports, business, and general news, that we folded in to ChicagoTribune.com to make it stronger. And you can see that in the way that it's organized at the top of the page. That's the reason people primarily come to the website, is to be updated all the time about what happens during the day. Now you can see paging down below, you can see that enterprise content, much of which we feature in the printed edition, we've called out into a series of bands at the bottom of the page. We're just really trying to create a multi-tiered experience for people that take that content and present it in different ways. So I think ChicagoTribune.com and the printed edition are therefore far more complementary than perhaps they were before, in recognition of the fact that people have different information needs and appetites depending upon their time and their environment, and we're wanting to be able to provide that for them at those times. So I'm going to ask Phil to talk about how we communicated these ideas to consumers.
Great. So now that you know what changed, it was important to understand what the best way to communicate this was to our market. So the problem with marketing communication, as many of you know, is you could have the best product out there, but if you don't talk to people about it in a way that resonates with them, they're never going to hear you and they're never going to know about it. So as much as I like to believe the marketing could be all about creative, which I wish it was, there is a lot of science behind it, and maybe that's what happens when you put a finance guy into marketing. So we asked our market a series of 10 questions, statements that were about the changes that we plan to make. And what we did was ask them how credible, how relevant, and how positive it made them feel. We also asked them whether or not they'd be likely to seek out the new content as we described it in one of the 10 statements. And then we measured their responses using what we call net sentiment. And basically what that is, it's a mathematical calculation. It's the difference between the percentage of respondents who responded very positively to that statement and the respondents who responded very negatively to that statement. And that you net those together to get net sentiment. The result was something that looked like this, our bubble chart. So what this represents is the x-axis along the horizontal was how relevant consumers found our message. The y-axis along the vertical was how likely they were to seek out the content. So how relevant the message was and how likely they were to seek out the content. Each bubble represents one of the statements we asked them to evaluate, and the size of the bubble represents how much respondents liked the statement. So that was another question that we asked after they ranked the statement in terms of relevance and content. So obviously, as you look at this, the farther into the upper right-hand quadrant that you go, the better the statement is, because not only is it relevant, but it actually activates people to want to go and seek out that content. So as you look at these, we found there was a couple of different responses. So in the lower quadrants, where which are less desirable responses, we had avoider statements. So avoiders were neither relevant nor would they make people want to seek out the content. So staying away from those. Non-starters were relevant, but didn't make them go out and want to get the content. So we really stuck to the upper right-hand quadrant, which were our positives, and we split that into two areas, one being core and one being niche. Niche is more like conversations you would have with somebody who is already a subscriber and potentially just needs reinforcement. So it's like a retention message. And then our winning statements were really comments about the core. So if you look at the winning statements, they were reinforcing the core. So exactly what is it that Chicago Tribune provides as a product. We also said things like, we listen. We listen to what you want from us, and then we're providing it. So they loved those statements, and they loved premium local. They loved the idea of it being a premium local product. So in the end, the message that informed our marketing campaign was the following. More than ever, the Chicago Tribune is now a serious news reader's newspaper. More depth, more stories, more news and information from around the world. So that is what we kind of kept as an overarching framework as we built our campaign. So before we move on to the campaign, I always like to remind people that it's sort of a fertilizer example that I stole from one of my colleagues at Tribune, and that is people don't buy fertilizer, they buy green lawns. So rather than talking about the fertilizer and talking about what we're peddling, I want to talk about the value that they're going to get by using our product. So the first thing we did as we developed this campaign was we did something kind of unique. We decided to do a teaser campaign because we wanted to really, I'm originally from Missouri, so maybe it was a show me kind of thing. We wanted to show consumers how much was really being added to the product. So what we ran a week before the enhancements were made to the products, we actually ran 44 pages, primarily blank, that basically said things like want more and gave the date that the enhancements were going to occur. And this was, it was a good way to sort of generate some interest and some excitement around the campaign and begin to really introduce it. The campaign itself revolved around what they're called the woodcuts, which are the graphics that now are part of the masthead in the new enhanced product. Each version of the print, outdoor, and TV campaign focused on what additional value readers would receive. So that green lawn kind of message. It also took the opportunity to reintroduce the revamped website that Jerry had mentioned earlier with the breaking news message. So the messages were simple, they were clean, and they were, most importantly, very Chicago-esque. So even our TV spot focused on kind of that green lawn message, using the same imagery and the print as the print and the outdoor campaigns. So let's take a quick look at that 15-second spot. So again, no voiceover, not a lot of benefit feature conversation, but a lot of benefit conversation. So we received really positive feedback about the results of the product changes that we made across many of our own channels and throughout the industry. But in the big scheme of things, to me, it was a nod to the changes that we made, but it was also validation of the messaging that it was really told the consumers about the change. At the same time, Jerry had mentioned earlier that we had redesigned our website. So what we found interesting about this was generally site redesigns are met with falling traffic. And actually, as we redesigned this, it immediately was met with rising traffic. So we actually saw traffic grow immediately upon launch. We use social media monitoring to really hear what web users were talking about in terms of the product. So the word cloud you see to the right of the graphic represents the words that people use in social media to describe our product, and the size of the word represents the relative frequency that we heard it. So all in all, we were very pleased with the words, the responses. They weren't negative, they were generally positive, or they talked about the actual changes to the product, which is a good thing. So the journey didn't stop, of course, with our marketing campaign or these enhancements. It continued to expand in ways, the ways in which consumers can interact with our brand. So I want to turn it back over to Jerry, who's going to talk about some of these new interactions.
Great. So while we improved the Chicago Tribune, we also have been working hard on developing other channels. Again, I said that the printed paper isn't for everyone, and if we are looking at a variety of communities, we need to come to them in different ways. And so live programming is one of the ways that we use to engage our audiences and connect with them, and then to us. I think it's a major new initiative by the newsroom, and we plan about 100 of these events of all different kinds across the year under the Trib Nation banner, our little logo, our little name for this idea of community engagement. Now, this is not what newsrooms typically do. In fact, I think newsrooms generally have avoided these kinds of things. But we really do believe in this idea of engagement and connecting with people, and we look at live programming as another platform for our journalism. It's an expression also of our role as a community meeting place, whether that meeting place is on the pages of the printed paper or on our digital screens or in auditoria around the city. These programs include things like Chicago Forward, which is our public affairs forum, and in fact, next week, April 4th, we're bringing together Mayor Rahm Emanuel and Governor Pat Quinn for the first time on the stage to talk about the fiscal crisis facing Illinois, and including how to deal with those public pension problems. We've also produced 35 performances of Chicago Live. Maybe some of you have seen that. This is along with our creative partner, the Second City. This show brings together newsmakers and Tribune personalities and writers and cultural and entertainment figures for 90 minutes of conversation and fun. So rather than describe it, we have a short clip to give you a sense of these programs.
And the fact that it has to be defined and put to some use within a discursive environment post 9/11 speaks more to the environment than it does to the underlying thing that Islam may or may not be.
We die of cancer, but we die because we're too frail to weather the storm of cancer. And so you get your activity any way you want. And by the way, get more sex.
Worried about paying for college? I can tell. Tips for parents and teens.
Okay, and so just about a month ago, we launched something new, our Printers Row Literary Membership Program. This is our first foray into premium content, that is content for Chicago Tribune readers with very specific interests. Includes a Printers Row weekly journal with book reviews and literary articles. It also includes a weekly booklet of original fiction, something very new, and admission to our growing schedule of live author talks and literary programs that we call Printers Row Live. Now, we're emphasizing this multifaceted idea because this is more than a newspaper book section. In fact, the Tribune, like other newspapers around the country, once published a book section. But like most others, it was not sustainable under an old model. There was never much advertising base for it. That's just the way it is. That's the way the book industry is. And we delivered it to every household, whether they were interested in it or not. And so the numbers were just too much to sustain. But this approach is different. Printers Row costs $99 a year. We ask people to subscribe to the program and pay it. And it's delivered in a print form in the Sunday newspaper, to your Sunday newspaper. And you also get it in an e-edition emailed to you as well. Now, if you haven't had a chance to see it, I think we passed out or will pass out some copies of it today. Take a look at it, tell us what you think, and if you like it, hope you join. We believe that this kind of premium tiering is a really promising business model for us. It's going to enable us, I think, to offer readers more, not less, more by being able to do it in a targeted way. We're also moving along a broad front digitally as well. We've added some new things for iPad. The Bulletin is our daily iPad app for Bulls fans. And just as Apple was introducing the iPad 3, our Red Eye team introduced its new iPad app, which is very cool. And another short video to explain that to you.
My name is Crain, and I'll be your tour guide for Red Eye's new iPad edition, which I'm super excited to share with you. Our daily iPad edition delivers to readers everything they've come to expect from the paper and a whole lot more that is specifically customized to the iPad reading experience. It's an immersive, interactive, and dynamic reading experience that brings the content to life by integrating video, audio, live films, social media, and more. It swipes, scrolls, turns, and zooms. iPad users can access live Twitter feeds from our writers, watch a trailer that accompanies a movie review, or listen to a song from a band interview, all within the app. We'll also be delivering iPad-exclusive content that focuses on leisure and entertainment, such as fashion, music, and dining, since we know that readers are using the iPad primarily in their downtime.
So our success depends on understanding what Tribune readers, what consumers want, and then making good on our promise to deliver it. We give readers regular progress reports, as we did last fall with this Spadia, which came several months after the launch. And it's part of a continuing conversation that we have with readers through the paper, digital media, and in person about what we're doing. I think this is far more important than market research. Not that market research isn't important, but having that regular content is vital. If we truly are in tune with people and understand their worlds, then we can grow. And one of the people that's really responsible for that is in the audience, Margaret Holt, our standards editor, is relentless and dedicated at outreach to readers on an individual basis and also as groups. So we must keep reinventing ourselves, in reimagining what a newspaper is and can be and what it does in the digital age. And as I said before, I think we must be more than the medium that we transmit information through. We must be part of this community with readers. The readers are people who are interested in news, interested in ideas, involved and care about the joys and hardships that make up a life today. I think they care about the city, about the nation, about the world. They're curious, they believe in fair play, and they care about our quality of life. And I think we do too, and we want to communicate that idea. That's ultimately what it means to be part of a community. And before we get to the Q&A, Phil and I want to show this video, which I think captures kind of the feeling of that idea. Thank you for inviting us today, and we're going to stop for some questions. So, all right. Shall we be over here?
Take it too far, sure.
All right. I'll put these right here.
So a fascinating update on, as you said, where you've been since you were here in late 2009. A question that occurs to me listening to you talk, Phil, about the role of using the net promoter score or the net sentiment in determining the messaging ties sort of to the idea of competition. Does that imply that the Tribune is more in competition with itself than it is with some of the other media choices that we saw displayed when you were outlining who the segments are?
Well, I think we're only in competition with ourselves if we're trying to give the same message to everyone. So that's what's going to cause confusion in the market. So I don't know if we're in competition with ourselves as much as we are in competition for people's time. And so as long as I can talk to them in a way that's the most resonates the most with them, then I have the best chance of garnering some of that time.
And have you seen, Jerry, that the response after you chose the messaging and you went to market with the additional content in these focused areas, has the response been in sync with what you expected based on that research ahead of time?
I think we've been really gratified by the response. It's been, I think it exceeded our expectations anecdotally in terms of, in terms of, getting readership and getting people to pay the price increase. I think it was overwhelming because I feel like it was like a lot of old friends out there that, suddenly saw a lot more vitality in the paper than was there before. I also say that it's a great way for us to connect with people that lie outside of the demographics that read newspapers. I think they've also been very excited about the new media we've been launching, especially the tablet apps.
You just mentioned again people paying the price. And we saw that video of Tron Ha, the Red Eye editor, walking us through the new Red Eye app, which is being offered for free now, but which you intend to charge for. So here's an interesting wrinkle. We got a free newspaper, going to be 10 years old this year, and we're commemorating the anniversary by launching something to make people pay us again. What's the thinking there? What's your expectation for marketplace acceptance?
So I think we're going to learn about this every day. We just launched it. We've offered the app free for a month. It's $1.99 after that. I think it's also
$1.99 a month.
A month, rather, yeah. So it's a venture into the mobile world where I think people are far more accustomed to paying for access than than before. And so as a result, I think I think the deal is different. It's a different presentation. It has some, I think, unique value with it, and we think that our content's worth something, and we ought to charge for it.
Well, and as well, the latest statistics I read were that 1 out of 4 people who use apps and tablet computers have already paid for news and information with their tablet. So it seems silly to not use that as an opportunity to take a look at what a paid model would look like in that realm, given that, because if you compare that to online, it's about 1 in every 20, so it's about 5% have actually paid for news and information in the online world.
Right, and full disclosure, right, I do that. I pay $1.99 a month for access to Encyclopedia Britannica on my phone and my tablet, so the value proposition idea is a powerful one. One more question from me, and then I'd like to open it up to the audience. You started out by talking about the Tribune's commitment to stand up for the community, as evidenced, yes, through your watchdog reporting, but significantly also through the newspaper's editorial voice. clearly that resonated with these segments that you've identified. Is it having the desired impact on behalf of those segments with the elected officials that even in this ad you showed us at the end, you're intending to hold accountable?
I think it is. It's hard to quantify that in a lot of ways, I think, but we took and let me talk about a couple aspects of this. One is, I think that before, when we did investigative reporting, like many other news organizations, we would do project-based reporting, and we still do that. But we also try to do reporting that is that comes much faster than a project that might take 4 or 5 months to do. We try to publish and then keep publishing and keep keep pressure on. And I think that idea of increasing the frequency of our reporting has actually helped build pressure for change. I think that our investigative reporting has resulted in legislative reforms, not as many as we would have liked. Certainly the fugitive series has resulted in a lot of change in terms of the law enforcement agencies and what they do. Durbin has conducted Senate hearings about it. I mean, we routinely go back and follow up and be able to show people what the results of that have been. I think opinion leadership has been effective in kind of focusing attention on those problems and really kind of setting an agenda, which we say for change. We identify those ideas. They are all about ending corruption and righting the state's fiscal situation, education reform, transparency in government, and we keep on that subject, and we take those editorials to page 1. And that has really, I think, helped us focus public attention on those things and helped us define who we are and why we're important.
And one other quick thing, I do want to add to that too.
Right.
We do measure an engagement score. So we use a RAM panel, which is several thousand people who read us, both subscribers and single copy folks. And so we ask them a series of, there's about 10 questions, I believe, that tries to measure their engagement. So how often they engage with us, how much they refer that information to friends, da-da-da-da. So we measured that beforehand, and then we measured it just a few months ago, and it has increased pretty dramatically. So I like to, of course, believe it's because of all the things we've done, but the good news is engagement is increasing, and people are using our product more. So that's just a good sign.
Great. Do we have mics in the? Okay, so Kristen, you'll bring a mic to whoever has questions. Down here in front, please.
I didn't hear you say anything about Trib Local. What role does Trib Local play in the new Tribune model?
Trib Local is a key dimension, a key part of the local news strategy. Owen Youngman had a huge role. He was kind of the father of Trib Local when he was at the Tribune. Clearly the Chicago Tribune is taking a more regional approach to the news. Trib Local is about breaking down the communities into smaller chunks and providing that kind of information to it. So we've invested a lot in it over the last couple of years, and there's been a lot of competition in that space from Patch and others as well. So it's an important tier, part of our local news coverage.
It's one place where Sun-Times Media is actually investing right now, is in Pioneer.
Yeah.
More questions? Over here, please.
I know you have a lot of different platforms that you're focusing on more extensively now, and I'm wondering, when it comes to the actual content, do you tailor the content to the particular, is it app or mobile, online, whatever it is? Do you have different content for each one of those, or do you use the same content and present it differently?
It's both. I think it all begins with the consumer, the news user, and his or her situation and environment, and what do they need at that moment. It governs what we provide and its form. Some of it is content that we'll produce, and you'll see it in the newspaper, you'll see it online. But our reporters are really multitaskers all day long. They'll go to a city council meeting, they'll send a quick item to the website, they'll tweet a news item, they'll come back and write an analysis, all of which are really tailored more to what each medium is best at delivering, but it really has to start with the end user. What do you want and what do you need at the moment?
So, semi-related to that sort of different packaging for different audiences. Obviously I look out here and I see all the copies of Printers Row. It looks just like the one that arrives in my driveway on Sunday mornings. How big does a niche need to be for you to consider adding a premium tier for people who are passionate about it? And what is that calculus, and how much of that is consumer interest, how much of that is advertiser interest, how much of that is your sense of what the Tribune needs to be successful? Well,
I'll maybe we can both jump in on this in different perspectives. So we're doing real-time learning on this right now. We launched Printers Row. We had some good idea about, again, looking at those segments and their interests. We identified that as an interest that was underserved, and we wanted to try this thing. We didn't have all the answers about how big does it need to be and all this. We have some sense of that. But before, in the old model, we were, and Owen knows this because he was features editor at one time, we published a book section and we distributed it to everyone in the circulation area, and that was somewhere at 900,000 to 1 million at that time.
More than 1 million even.
Mm-hmm. And I said, I was just doing a back of the envelope on that at one point. If you loaded up all the costs against that, we probably lost somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year on that, and we did it for decades. So I would say that that's no longer tenable, obviously. We stopped that. So how big does a niche need to be in terms of that? I think in terms of how well do you satisfy and keep interested those core readers, and can you cover your costs and make some money? And where is the price point that is necessary to do that? So, we don't need to talk in terms of hundreds of thousands of subscribers as we once did for this. It's more in the tens of thousands range, but we're learning that as we go along, and that's the reason we're going to try things. And some of them will work and others will not. We're going to learn along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, the good news is most of that's low-hanging fruit. So we probably have a lot on our list after literature that we'll be able to execute against and get fairly good-sized niche audiences. So I think it's all about looking at the ROI of what it costs us, and because it's really just the incremental cost today, it's very easy for us to add on to what we do as opposed to having to recreate the structure. So it's not very expensive to add a niche product. So it'll be definitely, it's going to be driven by our segments and what their interests are.
In the back, Janice Castro.
Hi, I have thank you very much. This is a fascinating presentation. I have a question. I'm wondering how you arrived at the $99 price point, since that represents the total of, say, 5 national magazines for a year for me as a subscription. How did you get to that price point, and how many people do you hope or expect will pay it?
So it's an aggressive price point. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. But we also think that there's that it was, we did some research on that to determine how people perceive the worth of it. Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot there. There's 52 of the journals. The journal has a uniquely Chicago content and focus to it. There's those 52 of those fiction booklets. That's a very unique thing. those author talks, those author events provide access to. So the combination of these things we think is worthwhile. I always think about, the value of the newspaper and, that experience, and I compare it to things like my coffee drinking habit, which is probably north of $125 a month spent at Starbucks, or more than $200 a month spent on cable television. And I would argue that those things are great and valuable to me, but they don't provide the same benefits that we do here.
Down here in front, please. Second row first, and then Brother Tulski. No, right here. Second physical row.
Allergies, sorry. So I use the New York Times, and when the paywall started, I realized I can just cancel out the paywall loading. And your strategy obviously is very different from the New York Times paywall. And I was wondering, you have some strong fundamental beliefs on how you want to make money off these products. I was wondering what you thought of that, the New York Times paywall, and how your strategy may differ fundamentally.
Well, we're as you know, lots of media companies around the country are trying to solve this problem. How do you take what was given away for free? How do you take it and charge for it, right? I think Phil and I would agree that our fundamental position is that our coverage, our content, our journalism is worth something, and we need to figure out a way that we can get paid for it. We have not, we're working on ideas. There are ideas at work in the company right now.
You could talk about the LA Times membership model, right?
Sure.
Yeah, you want to talk about that? Yes.
So LA Times, I think, 3-4 weeks ago, put up a membership model. So what they asked non-7-day subscribers to do, and make sure I get all this right because it is a little bit confusing, they asked them all to pay another 49 cents a week for non-7-day. So they have a lot of like Sunday only subscribers. And then I think they are asking, or is that a month? I'm sorry, that's a month. And then 99 cents a month right now for non-print subscribers. Now that price is going to go up. So what they're trying to do, I think, is get people used to paying something, even if it's a very small amount. So they're looking at that. And theirs is not a very leaky wall. So New York Times is a very leaky wall. So to what you're saying, and that is a strategy. There's that strategy of people who just are kind of irritated by the leakiness of it and having to go sort of around and to get through it and are willing to pay for it. Then there's the other strategy where you literally lock it down. Like the paper I came from in New York, Newsday, it's locked down. You cannot, unless you're a subscriber or a Cablevision customer, you cannot access it. So there's a lot of different models, and I don't know that anybody knows the right answer today. So I think a lot of people are going to try a lot of different versions until we get to the one that really works well for everybody.
Rick Tulski.
So I'm struck by how differently you've responded to bankruptcy than lots of other newspapers that go through it. Adding more pages isn't the normal approach.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing, but I'm wondering to what degree you feel weighted down by bankruptcy and what you think the future will hold about that.
It's at some point, I'd like to look at bankruptcy in the rearview mirror and be able to reflect upon it and maybe, write my own book about it, right? I'll just say this. I think that I'm very proud of the staff of the Chicago Tribune who pulled together and was creative and innovative at a time of trial, and I think that is quite unusual. I think that as a result of the crisis that we all felt, I think there was something liberating about it as well. I think because we had to act quickly and that we didn't have the luxury of overanalyzing things, we had to try and be willing to fail at some things. I think it was quite liberating, and as a result, there was an impulse to do new things, to take some risks. And I think that the risk taking, by and large, paid off, right? And I think that the risk of adding pages and then seeing if people would support you on that, I think there was a big risk. There was a big unknown about that. Let me put it this way: I thought there was some risk in it, but I believed that I just believed from everything I was hearing and seeing that it would work, and I think it did, and that's very gratifying. And I think success like that helps fuel others.
And you could, I mean, Phil, you come from the financial side and the circulation side. I mean, there's a significant piece of, as Jerry referred to the fact that Tribune continues to be profitable, that's tied up into many revenue streams that you've got that are not about delivering the news. There's the manufacturing and distribution of newspapers from across the market and so on. How does all that, when you're thinking about your competitive set, how does the fact that you need all these people that you're delivering to stay in business factor into it?
So I mean, it's always been crazy. I mean, if you think about just sort of standard models in terms of a business life cycle, a mature or a declining market should be consolidating, and probably newspapers were the last people to want to do that. And so, as we started to look at, we had, you had Chicago Tribune trucks and then Sun-Times trucks passing the same locations all throughout the city, and so. Again, we've started to consolidate. That's a huge business for us now, and it's one that is win-win. So it's a win for them, and it's a win for us in terms of leveraging our assets. So it's been a wonderful business. We're also focused heavily, as you point out, on the circulation side, and now, and switching maybe from a model of 80% advertising and 20% circulation to more equitable, maybe 50-50. It's where
Which
you're
is where
headed.
Europe has been for a long time.
Absolutely, Europe and South America have been there for a long time.
I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions before we break. Let's start with Marty.
So, speaking of advertisers, you've got lots of brands out there trying to engage more with their consumers, like you are. Do you find more that the advertisers are on board with this, or are you seeing more advertiser engagement with the paper to get at the consumer?
I mean, I don't know if I can answer that particular question. I do know that it's a harder conversation because we have so many different things to offer them. So as their portfolio increases, obviously the complexity increases, and television went through this 30 years ago, where you went from 4 stations to hundreds. And so that fragmentation does mean you have to do a new sales model, and you have to really focus on meeting the needs of the advertiser and really solution selling, as opposed to just bulk selling, which is kind of how print has done it for many years. So I think for them, it's going to be better. We have to be able to tell them about it in a way that resonates with them on the advertising side as well.
Marty, you just want to pass the mic back 1 row.
I just want to say thank you very much, and I'm so glad I downloaded the Red Eye app already before the prices go up. Just one brief question. What is your long-term vision for Red Eye? Where do you see the Red Eye in 5 to 10 years, possibly?
I think that's a question that Phil should answer.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, so Red Eye so I was part of the team that originally developed Red Eye, so that was a really fun project. Owen was there. He just gave us a mandate and put us in a room and locked us up for 2 months. So.
And they didn't come out.
No.
But they were just as handsome when they did. It was amazing.
It was a little smelly, but it worked. And I think it's evolving. So I'd like to see it continue to evolve. Actually, what's interesting about Red Eye, and I don't think I'm talking out of school at all, the people that really adopted Red Eye early on in 2002, the year that we launched it, have actually followed it. So the actual average age of our reader has aged slightly. So now the next question is, it was funny because people said, we could never develop a product that people younger than traditional newspapers would read, and we did. So now the question is, can we develop a Red Eye that's for that next generation? So like the segment 3 is the digerati that I talked about, that younger urban segment that aren't necessarily, they are reading the print product, but we'd like to have them even more engaged, as engaged as our early adopters of Red Eye, the print product, were. So I see it staying around, and I'd like to see it become something for that younger generation.
I'll just add this comment about the legacy of Red Eye. I think the future of it may lie in lots of places that don't necessarily have the Red Eye name on it. Mm-hmm. I think it was one of the really bold, innovative, risk-taking ventures of the last 10 years. Faced a lot of resistance. It was launched. It took a while for it to get to critical mass, but did eventually. It became a huge success. And it became this island of creativity at the Chicago Tribune. And many of the people that helped originate that and were the creative forces there, our managing editor, Jane Hurt, who was the first editor of Red Eye, is now working at the Chicago Tribune and leading it, and our other new products. Mike Kellums is our sports editor. The newsroom is populated, is sprinkled with people who kind of cut their teeth on Red Eye and carry with it this gene of innovation and experimentation. And so you're going to start to see their handiwork. You're already seeing their handiwork in many of the things that we showed you today.
One of the funniest things to think about, having launched Red Eye 10 years ago and now being here, is that no one in the world hated Red Eye more than Medill students. It was remarkable. It was yet one of the many times I was accused of bringing an end to journalism as we know it, and I think it has worked out slightly differently.
I thought that was my role.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not one of the other things that Jerry and I have traded off over the years.
Okay.
So let's thank our guests for being here.
Thank you. Thank you much.